once again. I am glad to be here once again. It's been such a long time. I remember sharing in a number of these when I wasn't pastoring at the time. I wasn't serving as a full-time pastor. I was communication director here and there, and so the Sabbath was a little bit more flexible. But nowadays, I'm in the gauntlet on Sabbath. So I'm glad to be with you all here again, my A Today family. And man, Dr. Sarbold, I think it was like 2012 that you asked me to start writing for.
That's right. That at that point, I was doing best practices for Adventist ministry,
Yeah.
and I had met you at an event, and I thought, boy, this guy is really sharp and a good writer. And you have been writing ever since. You wrote a book in the meantime, too, I think.
Well, there were several of them.
Several of them. Okay.
Well, here's the funny thing about that is that I remember you had asked me to write for best practices, and so when they asked me to be the editor of Best Practices, I was especially honored because I felt that it was an opportunity to walk in your shoes a little bit, and so I was honored by that.
Thank you.
They
Uh,
subsequent they subsequently got rid of me. So I don't know how good a job I did, but but
well,
um
you've got your hands full with the churches in South
oh
Carolina.
for sure,
More than enough to do. Hey,
and
Christopher, if you click start on this, then we don't see the little lineup on your.
oh, listen. I was gonna say something about that. So my students complain all the time. I have a couple videos I want you all to see, and my
Oh,
students
good. Okay.
complain that when I'm in presentation mode, they can't hear the video, like it freezes. So you all bear
Oh, I've
with
had
me.
that happen. Yes. Good.
Yeah.
Okay.
You
Good.
you guys
Go
bear
for it.
with me. I know it's a little uncouth, but I've had this happen so many times that it's just so much more efficient to do it this way. If it weren't for the videos, we could just do it, the super fancy style. But I hope you'll gain from it nonetheless. Listen, um, we're in a crisis time, y'all, and if Adventists know anything, we know how to respond to crisis. The sermon today was about First Thessalonians, and I was kind of drawing on, well, really First and Second Thessalonians, but I was drawing on an article that I wrote for Adventist Today last year around the time of the election that got me in a lot of trouble. Uh, it got me in a lot of trouble, and there's part of the reason why I'm not at best practices anymore. Published it there for the NAD Ministerial, and there was a lot of complaints about that piece. But shout out to Dr. Seibold and Adventist Today. They saw it and published it immediately as it was taken down. But if you didn't know, I know we got some scholars here. Thessalonians is about how the people of God should respond in a crisis time, right? And Paul gives several directives, mandates that, I love that refrain. I was talking about it today. Love, abound in love, and to do it more and more, right? That our response to crisis is love, right? Our response to persecution is love. It's patience, it's forbearance. And we're definitely in a crisis time. We are seeing the influence of the empire affecting our daily lives and our world um, in very marked ways. And there is no shortage of examples of that. And so I hope that our time together today, we can really get to the heart at what this means about the kingdom of God, what this means about empire, and what it means for Christians, right? Um, And so I'm thrilled. I'm glad to be here. I know my schedule doesn't permit often, but I cherish this space. I cherish the dialogue and all of you. And so I know that there are people who could speak um, much more substantively to this. I'm grateful to share my perspective. I saw just yesterday, I want to say I saw just yesterday this new film, Zootopia. Obviously a children's movie, but it is not simply made for children. If you saw the first one, you know that they're tackling some really serious issues, particularly discrimination and bigotry. But the second one, ironically, deals with marginalization and how we deal with the other, right? And we learn in the film, there's a little spoiler alert here. We learn in the film that the big idea behind the the multi-climate spaces in Zootopia was the brainchild, was the genius of a snake. But snakes have been marginalized and ultimately become erased in the society. And powerful film. I feel like a lot of children's movies are not really for children. Because I suppose children would enjoy the animation and the excitement, but they kind of need an adult to help them understand what it's really about, right? And but if you're watching and you're an adult and you are a thinking person, you know exactly what it's about, and it's a very timely film and a timely story to talk about something that we are really wrestling with right now, and that's why we're here today to talk about xenophobia. And the reason why I chose this title and Dr. Seibold and I kind of worked on this together. The title that is that we're taught as children that the stranger danger. When you see the piece that comes out, when it comes out, you'll see I'm reflecting about preparations for a trip to South Africa here in a few days, and had a colleague tell me that um, um, that Africa has open borders. I just took it as took it as the truth, as a fact, and um, turns out Africa does not have open borders. Like it's not definitely not open borders, not controlled borders, but they're not closed borders, but they're definitely controlled. And so I'm filling out this form, declaration for South African visitation, blah blah blah, and it's asking me the typical questions like, what are you coming for? Where are you coming? What's your flight number? Where's your flight? Why are you coming here? What are you bringing? Like, and it's obvious that there has to be some kind of control, right? That you don't want terrorists, known terrorists, just randomly popping up in your country. That would be a bad sign, right? And so, if I told because it's the South African Revenue Service is where you got to go to fill out that form. And if I told a SARS website that I was bringing plutonium, there would probably be another level of review. You know, my my file would probably be ratcheted up and sent up the flagpole a little bit. And so it's not to say that there are not there are not needs for controls, right? Um, but it does call into question what we understand about dangerous and who is dangerous and how do we treat strangers and how do we determine who gets in and who doesn't. Now, a little bit of history here. I'm not a historian, but I am in a practical sense. This this book is really cool. Black AF History. Michael Harriot is a genius and a masterful storyteller, and he told a story in here that really grabbed my attention about George Menifee. It's here in chapter 3, page 56. George Menifee is an interesting cat, very shrewd. Uh, y'all know at Ellis Island, I don't know if they still do, but they used to speak about slavery. They called it forced immigration, right? Forced migration. And George Menifee was the first person. So Virginia, the Virginia colony, established some policies around about the management of the new colony. And what they had decided was that they needed to find a way. Michael Harriot talks about how the colony was failing, in the early 1600s, and they needed a way to convince people to come. But if you were poor, if you were impoverished and oppressed Brit who was starving in Britain, you weren't excited about getting on a ship and potentially dying on the Atlantic and then coming here to starve because they had heard that the colony wasn't going well, that people were dying, people were sick, you couldn't grow food. They were struggling so hard to balance it. And so Virginia established this policy that they're going to raise some colonizers by promising land grants to anybody who came. Right. Well, George Menifee is a genius. He decides uh, he's gonna accrue and he's gonna get some land. He's gonna get some of those land grants and take advantage of some of those land grants by bringing over enslaved people. Now, that was actually the plan. The plan was you encourage some indentured servants to come and work, and when they work, they will earn their piece of land. Well, George Menifee says, nah, I'm going to keep the land. I'm just going to bring some people here to work for me. And then I win twice. I get the land, I get the labor. Oh, well, three times. I get the land, I get the free labor, and then I get the product or the profits from the products that we get from the land. Genius dude. So he gets like 3,000 acres 2 years in a row by bringing black people from Britain, from Europe. And then the floodgates came open. And in 1662, I understand that was one of the first slave codes when Virginia said, hold on, this is getting kind of crazy. Let's be clear that these black people that are coming over here do not have the same rights as white people. you know? And see, this is why this whole Charlie Kirk thing is so kind of crucial, right? Because Charlie Kirk says that the American Constitution was the most beautiful document ever read. Well, that was if you were white, you were male, you were a landowner, and you were rich, you know. But if you weren't one of those things, and here's the thing: you could be a white male, but if you weren't a landowner, if you weren't rich, it didn't. The Constitution didn't apply to you. So from the very beginning, it was exclusive. From the very beginning, it was it was piracy from the very beginning, right? And the irony of immigration, our immigration policies, is that the people who tried to make the rules were immigrants, and they came over here and then changed the rules on everybody. Like what? Like this is it's not even your nation. You can't pick the rules. You guys got to check out. And this is apparently a depiction of the 1682 treaty between William Penn and the natives. But you really want to check out this website. It's really cool. And Dr. Seibold, I can make this presentation available because in the notes here I do have links to everything. Right. So if you want to check some of this stuff out, you can on your own. I thought this website was really cool because it has this timeline here about that relates directly to our policy, right? Our immigration policy and the whole I mean the very beginning of the timeline 1790 is like nationality act. We're going to determine who is a citizen. It's like make it make sense. Like you're not a citizen, you're an immigrant. So why don't we ask the natives who should be citizens, right? We're going to talk about natives in a little bit. And then all of these policies springing up. um, and then the one that directly relates to the Haitian Revolution, suddenly we're really afraid of black people. And then in 1830, the Indian Removal Act. I attended the a powerful Trail of Tears, and it's a theatrical presentation that takes place in Cherokee, North Carolina. I'm drawing a blank the name of it, but it's really powerful about the story of the Cherokee people and how they were removed from their land. And so the Indian Removal Act 1830, that immediately we become perpetrators, right? We become Americans. America is not even, it's just an idea at first, but the first Americans, the colonizers, were were pirates who oppressed the people who were originally here, right? And I always share this. I was so impressed. This is one of my cherished memories. I had an opportunity to, and one of these days we're gonna release the whole video because Elder Bradford was just a giant of a man, and I'll never forget the time Elder Bradford saw me in the parking lot, Oakwood Church. I'm coming out the door, and he was getting out his car, and he said, "Young man, you are the one who's supposed to be writing about the things we're supposed to be talking about." I didn't even know Elder Bradford knew who I was. you know, I was just like, "Wow, thank you, Elder." Yes, yes, sir. And I'm proud that before he died, some years before he died, we had the idea to just kind of capture some of his genius on video. Not that there isn't any video of him, but we wanted him to talk about freedom and talk about the legacy of of the fight for freedom in our country. And he said something that really grabbed my attention, and it's always stuck with me. I want to try and play the video, which again is why we're in this weird setup here. I want to try and play the video because it's something that he says that I think about all the time, and I'm glad that we got it on tape here.
They had excursions. They got boats, ships, came to America. What were they looking for? Freedom. Oh, freedom. My mother used to sometimes say, "Oh, you promised me my freedom." She was talking about her grandparents. All of us are thinking about freedom. By the way, don't you think that God created us for freedom? Did he wish that we should one serve another as a slave or indentured servant? That was not God's plan. So it is interesting to see how this country treated a certain group of people. And those people, I'm one of them, my family, my parents. I don't have to go far back. My mother's mother was a little girl when freedom was declared for the slaves. Isn't that something? In fact, they looked at the natives, who were not as many. Uh, in a few years, we were larger numbers than the first dwellers on these shores. And they certainly looked at them as though they were stepchildren of the father. They came and claimed everything. By the way, they made 500 treaties with the Native Americans and broke every one. I'm so sorry I have to be frank, but as a minister of the gospel, I can't sugarcoat it. I've got to tell it like it is. Also, I don't tell it without knowing that God, who made us, can straighten anything out. So I'm not ashamed of the gospel of Christ, That's freedom.
Elder Bradford told us so many stories. He's such a giant of a man, and so particularly wise. Um, and like I said, one day we're going to release the whole video because he talked to us for like over an hour. But what I remember when he said that it really grabbed my attention. 500 treaties, and he broke every single one. Now, I was really struck by that. I felt like it rung a bell, like I'd heard it before, um, but it grabbed my attention in such a way that I went and looked it up, and it's math. You depends on who you ask, whether it was 500 Sarah Pruitt here says 368. And the point was that the breaking of the breaking of the treaties was strategic. It was for the purpose of of control. Really, this has always been about control. And so when we look at it in the present, when we think about what's happening right now, um, the immigration has never been about um, truth and justice. It's never been about law and order. It's always been about control and about power and about wealth, right? That's at the core of what we're talking about. And these are hallmarks and values of empire. It's definitely not a kingdom of God. It's not goodwill. It's not morality. It's not any of that. This is what empires do, right? And here's evidence. This is this week, y'all. This week. Did you all hear about this? Um, Yuha Vietnam. I'm trying to pronounce the name properly. Previously known as the San Manuel Nation. We got friends in Ukaipa, y'all. I got friends that live in Ukaipa. But th- these this group of natives known as the San Manuel Nation, put up the billboard, and I guess it was the day before Thanksgiving. The billboard that they put up, apparently their tribe um, has a casino in the area, because this is reservation land, sacred land, and um, and they put up this billboard, um, just promoting their people, and it was vandalized. America is not on stolen land. Your ancestors were conquered. Oh, so it was always about it was always about being conquered. It was always about power. That's the conversation we are actually having, kind of without having it, is that who gets to decide? That's that's what we're talking about. And that's what empires do. You don't get to decide. We get to decide. The irony of this is that this is what the billboard actually looked like. The people of the San Manuel Nation, the Yuha people, Yuha people are actually, notice on a billboard, it says a name has power. These people are actually, this is like a campaign that they're doing to reclaim their original name. That they became known as the San Manuel Nation because of the history of the subjugation and displacement. That's not who they actually are. Their name is the Yuha Vietnam. And so they are in the midst of this campaign to reclaim their name and to reclaim their identity. And here come the colonizers all over again. Talk about irony and timing, right? That was this week. It's actually very powerful. There's a film, there's a video that's a part of this campaign that they're doing to reclaim their name, a namehaspower.com, that they posted on Facebook. Such a powerful video about their history and about their legacy and about their identity and about who they are as a people. Apparently, the name Yuha Vietnam means people of the pines. So powerful that they identify themselves with the strength of the land and the land itself. That's their identity, and um, that that there are those who would like them to assume the status and the position of the conquered. Ain't that something? And so this is the context of the conversation. This is the actual context where the discussion about, remember, you got the whole you got this whole timeline. Now, I just showed you the beginning of it, but you got this whole timeline of our policy around immigration. But the whole foundation of our immigration policy is flawed, right? Um, so speaking of immigration policy, this came out in 2019, Standard Law Review. This piece, the very first line is so profound that 2 years under Trump presidency, and mind you, now this is the first Trump term, the first Trump term. He says 2 years under Trump presidency, white nationalism may be driving the administration's immigration policy. You think, right? Like, is there was there any doubt that it was about anything other than right? And notice he says a little bit further down in the introduction, he says this essay argues that legal challenges to Trump's restrictive immigration policies should call out white nationalism as underlying harm. Like that, this is what this is really about, right? That and the whole concept of manifest destiny, right? Some of those original papal bulls, and like Dr. Sabo said, we've written about this extensively, and there's a couple links in this in the presentation notes that the whole concept of colonization and about westward expansion for a lot of Europeans, including Catholic Church, well, it was racist. It had racist undertones, and it was white supremacist at its core, right? So we ought not be surprised that here it is, Stanford Law Review saying, man, this stuff is racist. It's white nationalism in garb, in political policy, political policy garb. And we know this because we just saw evidence of it on display as of this past May, that you had white Afrikaners, it was like 59 of them, who were moved to the front of the line this year, and the Episcopal Church Archbishop says, you know what? We have a partnership with the government to help refugees resettle. We are not participating. And the irony of this, and I'm going to say more about this in a second, but the irony of this is that you would think that Adventists would understand when oppression and when the empire is rearing its head. Like the Adventists are supposed to be the ones who understand how authoritarianism works, right? Revelation 13. Well, suddenly we sided with the authoritarians, like down with the immigrants. It's like what? Like you do know that Adventists are next, right? That if we can pick and choose who has the right to move about the cabin freely, then what's stopping us from saying that Adventists or people who worship on Saturday, people who don't eat meat, people who don't wear jewelry, they no longer have a place in this country, right? And so I want to share, just in case if anybody missed this, let's just be reminded, because we wrote about this as well, the work that they did to combat this. So.
Dozens of white South Africans touched down at Dulles Airport outside Washington yesterday, granted refugee status under a controversial executive order from President Trump.
Welcome. Welcome to the United States of America.
The administration says the 59 Afrikaners are fleeing government-sponsored race-based discrimination, pointing to a South African law that allows officials to claim private property for public use without compensation. The law was designed to address land inequality left over from apartheid.
It's a genocide that's taking place. White farmers are being brutally killed and their land is being confiscated.
South African-born Elon Musk has called the law racist and referred to the treatment of white farmers as genocide, but claims of a genocide have been widely discredited.
There is no persecution of white African and South Africans in South Africa.
Trump's move has prompted the Episcopal Church to end a decades-long partnership with the U.S. government to help resettle refugees, the church refusing to help this time.
It also saddens us to see that other refugees who are being denied entrance to the United States are people, brave people who worked alongside of our military.
On the same day the Afrikaners landed in the U.S., the Trump administration announced it's ending protected status for thousands of Afghans, some of whom fought alongside U.S. forces during the war. The administration says conditions have improved in Afghanistan to the point where the refugees no longer need protected status. Andrew Dimbert, ABC News, New York.
Um, I've written extensively about this, and um, his name is escaping me. Sean, I think I can't remember his name. The Archbishop of Episcopal Church. Um, y'all help me out. Remind me, what's the guy's name? But he's the one that is kind of leading the charge, and it's funny. He was invited to officiate President Carter's um, President Carter's funeral, and um, I didn't recognize that at first, but it was obvious what the point that they were making, right? That
Is this Sean Rowe?
John Rowe, yeah, I was thinking Sean. I just can't remember his last name. Yeah, Sean Rowe is the Archbishop and the one who was you know vocal and leading the way and speaking out that the Episcopal Church, no, we're not participating because this is racist and because it is a signal of white supremacy. And basically the point is we've been doing this work of helping refugees resettle, but you are denying access to refugees who are really truly at risk. And you're giving preferential treatment to white refugees. And the question is, why is that? In this particular interview here, they were talking about, Sudanese folks and some who had been resettled. And when you think about the threat to their lives that they have been experiencing for generations, you would think, and that's what they're saying, is that you would think that we would prioritize these people. So it's like, why are we prioritizing rich white South Africans, you know, or rich white Afrikaners? And it's because of their status and because of the place they hold. I want y'all to notice this. This is so profound. Again, the link is in the show notes. I just screen grabbed this. Immigration reform in the Catholic Church, May 1st, 2006. That Cardinal Roger Mahoney is publicly sharing that he is instructing Catholics and his leaders to practice civil disobedience because the laws are unjust and they are oppressive. He said, you disobey that law. And the irony again is that Catholics are leading the way. And this is in 2006. Catholics are saying, we'll show the rest of the world. And what was the strangers no more? I think they talk about it in this piece that they had kind of come together and wrote this manifesto, as it were, to combat this growing rhetoric against and is growing the number of policies against minorities and against refugees. And there's conversation. There needs to be conversation about the clergy persons over the years who have combated this stuff with this concept Imago Dei, right? The Imago Dei exception that because every human being bears the image of God, that we should be careful. We should be extra careful in who we decide to deny access to. And then, of course, the irony here is that this is what our nation is about, right? Apparently, like this is who we are, that we are the nation of immigrants, right? And you all are likely very well aware, very well familiar with Emma Lazarus's The New Colossus, where she calls, oh, it's such a powerful, powerful phrase. She calls, um, what is it? The mother of the refugees, or the mother. I forgot the phrase that she uses in the poem. The mother of those. Basically the concept is the mother of the homeless immigrants, those who want to come. And there's that those that stanza that we all love. Give me your tired, your poor, your huddled masses yearning to breathe free, the wretched refuse of your teeming shore. Send these, the homeless tempest tossed to me. I lift my lamp beside the golden door. Such a powerful, powerful image. And it's supposed to represent who we are, that this has always been a haven for people who were seeking freedom, for people who were seeking a better opportunity, for people who were seeking safety. And suddenly, and I understand they're new on Thanksgiving. Apparently, there's a report that came out that the president has decided that we're going to shut off um, access to all third world countries. Yeah, and it's not the first time he said this, but it's significant that it's coming right now, right? These are smart. Y'all are smart people. Y'all already know this stuff, right? That the the irony of all of this is that the Statue of Liberty was literally given to us as a gift, to from the French, to celebrate um, liberation. Twofold: liberation and the Declaration of Independence. So it was 1776 and 1865, right? And that we don't really talk about these two things: her chains at the bottom of her feet, which is a direct reference to slavery. And I just learned this really cool book, Her Right Foot, that she is not standing. She is on the move. She's walking. And the concept is, I will go and get them myself if I have to, because they will be safe here. There's a guy who wrote a whole book about this, her right foot, that I never knew this, that her right foot is not planted. It is leading. She's stepping off. She's going somewhere. And the concept is that liberty, that we are in pursuit of liberty. We are in pursuit of those who want to be free. We are going after people who want to find safe haven here. And it's just ironic that are we seem to be retreating from that. But here's the best part. Because the Statue of Liberty is not our symbol. That's the nation symbol. That's not our symbol. That's the U.S. symbol of freedom. Our symbol of freedom is the cross. And Jesus stretches his arms, and Jesus says, come to me, all you who labor and are heavy laden, and I will give you rest. And so, no, I'm not a politician. We're not doing politics, but the point is, in the kingdom, we don't operate like this. We do not exclude people because of their color. There's neither bond nor free, Jew nor Greek. And listen, I have some of my own members who are arguing with me about this stuff, and I'm like, this is not up for debate. We do not operate like this. And so the challenge is for us to let the empire be the empire. But as for me and my house, we gonna hide some refugees. As for me and my house, everybody is welcome here in our church. I don't know what y'all doing, but that's what we get from Jesus. And so we have to deal with the scripture, okay? The scripture gives us the principles. And see, what I wanted to do, Doc, I don't know, maybe during our discussion, you all can help me think like what are some of the principles that are at work here as far as when we're thinking about Christianity and the Christian life and the gospel. And I don't want to even say it because you all know this stuff. So I want to hear from you. Like, what are the principles that are at work here? Like the scripture teaches us, obviously we're not creating immigration policy right here, right? The nation has to have rules. Yes, the nation has to have rules. I guess the main thing we'll point out is that Christians cannot co-sign mistreating, marginalizing, and harming innocent people. Christians can't co-sign that because that's not who we are. Um, do not mistreat or oppress foreigners because you are foreigners. Like, I mean, it's like basic ethics right here. Like, you know, do unto others. This is a golden rule. Deuteronomy. He defends the cause of the fatherless and loves the foreigner. Um, and you are to love those who are foreigners because you were foreigners in Egypt. Like, so easily we forget, right? Now, for those of you who are scholars, you see the underlying gospel theme here, right? Obviously, I was a stranger and you invited me in. Like, what is our theology of strangers? You know, foreigners. I got one for you that I've been thinking about for weeks now. Do not forget to show hospitality to strangers. Oh, Jesus put on a spiritual guilt trip. He said, some of y'all have entertained angels unawares. Like, be careful. And there might be one of my people for real. Like, I'm like, we're not, are our people wrestling with this stuff? But this is the one that's been getting me like for weeks. I've been on this one for weeks. So then you are no longer strangers. I gotta read this one for y'all because this one, it has been haunting me. I'm gonna read this one for you because it's the passage, it's the few verses around it that make it like so powerful. It's Ephesians 2:19, but it's verse um 18 that really like sets it up, right? Verse 18 says, "For through him we both have access." It's a language, a powerful language here. We have access by one spirit to the Father, not to the country, to the kingdom. We have access to the king and to the kingdom. Now, therefore, you are no longer strangers and foreigners, but fellow citizens with the saints and members of the households of God. So hold on. Not only does God make us citizens, God makes us family. Like, man, talk about radical inclusion. And so I just gave it away for you. There's one of the principles, right? It's inclusion. Like the gospel says we have access, we have been given, John, to them he gave power, and y'all know that's legal power. That's not dunamis. It's exousia, I believe. That's legal authority to become the sons of God. Like, so God invites us into not only into citizenship but into close relationship. No longer foreigners and strangers. um, you are now citizens with the saints and members of the household of God. Like, how can a Christian in good conscience support zip tying innocent people in the street, especially babies? Somebody was literally arguing with me that it didn't happen. It's just like, dude, what are we talking about? So you rather argue whether or not somebody was zip tied rather than to promote the dignity of the human being, whether they were zip tied or not? Like, what are we talking about? How do we miss the heart of what's happening here? It's heartbreaking and astoundingly ironic because our entire faith is founded on an illegal migrant family. Jesus is literally a part of a poor migrant family who does not have a place to go. So the Savior of the world is born in a stable. And now we have the right and the opportunity to protect vulnerable people. Oh, and just in case that wasn't enough, had to flee political violence because there was a threat on his life before he was eligible for kindergarten. I have a theory that we thought that the last day crisis would be about worship, would be about the Sabbath, when it's really about human rights. And that the shaking begins because people allow the dictates of the empire to determine how they conduct their relationships. And that's how the empire takes over their lives. And so it's nothing for the empire to say, you can't go to church on Saturday. Well, we don't even let hungry people eat. Like we've been taking away people's right to buy or sell for a long time. Like, you know. You know, um I remember hearing about concentration camps and Gestapo, and it sounded so far away. But it's not far away anymore. It's literally our everyday experience now. And I'm hearing about, you know, friends in Charlotte who are having to contend with this stuff. I was asked recently to be on a committee to evaluate applications for a scholarship program. One of the questions was, have you had to deal with any like unusual challenges or circumstances? When I read this kid's application, I think I gave him 5s for everything. Because I think he had like a 2.7 or something, like his grades had like faltered. He had a glowing recommendation from some staff member at his school, but his grades have faltered. And he didn't even have like any wild, outlandish dreams. He wanted to go to tech school and be some type of trade worker. Ironically, I read about a girl this week who built her own plane as a part of her application and her bid to get at MIT. She literally built her own airplane. And they put her on a wait list because she was immigrant from Chicago. She figured out a way to get the attention of some professors, and she got in. She ended up getting her undergrad from MIT, PhD from Harvard, postdoctoral work at Princeton, and now she does research at some super duper highfalutin research institute in Canada. But we always want to talk about exceptionalism. It's really not about exceptionalism. It's about opportunity, right? But anyway, so this kid's grades had faltered, and um, then I found out why. Because when he talked about, I read the bottom of his application first, and he's talking about all his work. It asked him if they have any work history, and he's listing all these jobs. I'm like, why does he have so many jobs? He's like in high school. It was like so many jobs, and I'm like not believing it. Like I'm like, there's no way he worked at all these places. He's talking about he worked at Chick-fil-A. He worked delivering food. He had like 5, 6 different jobs. And then I went back up and read his unusual circumstances. This is a kid from my community. He says his dad was picked up by ICE and he had to drop out of school to work to pay bills for his family and get his dad legal assistance. He said I had to raise $15,000 for my dad's legal fees. And he said, and I did it. That kid deserves all of the scholarships. And I'm afraid that, number one, we're crippling our nation by denying opportunity and access to exceptional people who just want an opportunity. And then we are we're sealing our own destruction by perpetuating and condoning this kind of injustice. Again, I'm mindful that maybe even some of you could speak more intelligibly to this, but I think about it a lot, and I'm glad to share today. So thank you.
Thank you, Christopher. Excellent start to our conversation. My first person on the list, and by the way, the rest of you start raising your hands, and we'll get a queue going here. Bjorn, you're up first.
Thank you very much, Dr. Thompson. That was powerful stuff. I was on an H-1B when I lived in the U.S. after college, and I remember at one point I had 51 days left legally in the country, and I was scrambling, and it was, even in my very privileged situation, I felt that, how scary that can be. People were offering marriages of. There was a marriage of convenience offer at my Rotary Club. Yeah. Anyway, before I get into my question, which is a slightly different tack on the immigration situation and ties into actually the situation in the UK, I want to, and give me a moment, guys. I want to talk about Giving Tuesday, which is this Tuesday, December 2. So this coming Tuesday, it's one of our biggest giving days of the year, if not the biggest. And a few weeks ago, when we had this event at Loma Linda, the weeks that preceded it were very, very stressful for me, because I saw our church machinery in action in a bad way. We wanted to give a platform to excellent scholars who were doing a responsible job of talking about Ellen White. They weren't saying she was a fraud, and they weren't saying that she was perfect. They were saying she was a human used by God. And that book, just because it had generated some controversy at the White Estate, we were denied a platform to have this presentation. I tried to get it at Loma Linda. at the university, and they said no because of the controversies at the White Estate and at the General Conference. Now, it's not their fault. I realize the bind that the people that made these decisions are in, and it's difficult, but it does say something very, very sad about the state of our church when we get into that kind of a situation where we can't have open conversations. Now, Adventist Today supporters and donors being what they were, they eventually found a way. We were able to broker that space with the Loma Linda University Church where we could have the event. But I had a hotel lined up in case this didn't work out. We were trying to think of other contingencies because of how just clamped down the situation is. Now, Adventist Today exists and allows for things to happen that can't happen in the official denomination, and this was just very, very clear in this most recent conversation. So, if for no other reason than that, please consider giving generously to AT, because without organizations like this, we are a much less free, a much less open community of faith. It's depressing, it is dire, and it is urgent. We need to support open conversation, free thought, and a dialogue that is meaningful. So please do support us in our year-end fundraiser, and especially on Tuesday. I'm going to post a link. I'll get off that soapbox, but I wanted to say that very sincerely. So, Dr. Thompson, back to the immigration question. I live in Britain, and right now we're seeing a lot of England flags and UK flags going up, Union Jack and the England flags, and they are. It's not for a good reason. It's not because just people just love the country. It's anti-immigration. I was at the pub recently. Don't worry, guys. I was having coffee, and I heard someone playing on their phone this very sort of anti-immigration, hateful speech. And what's very weird is, along with all this anti-immigration talk, is a return to church for people. So people are going back to church, particularly the Church of England, not because they even believe in God. Britain's pretty secular, but because they feel that they have to preserve the Church of England as almost like an anti-immigration statement, so they can fight back against Islam, so they can keep, sort of English values or British values, so they can keep a national identity. And I read an article with a clergyman, an Anglican clergyman, and he said, well, he was struggling because it's nice to see people at church, but if they're coming for those reasons, how do we interact with them? Now, I don't know how much this is happening in the U.S. yet, a return to Christianity for sort of nationalist reasons. But from the conversations we seem to be having here at ATSS and other places, it seems to be a thing there too. So how would you as a pastor react to people that are scoping out your church for those kinds of reasons? Because it's a political statement. They want to maintain and reinforce a political identity, and that's why they're at church. That's why they're interested at church. How do you feel those kinds of that kind of interest?
Excellent question.
Such an excellent.
I'm eager to hear you answer this one.
Yeah. So what's profound, and thank you so much. We need a kind of a whole nother. Seriously, we need a kind of a whole nother ATSS to discuss that, right? Like how white nationalism, how Christian nationalism manifests itself in the Adventist church and in church spaces, right? It's a thing. It's a thing. And the really interesting thing is I don't think we recognize the extent to which we are playing into it, right? So like let's be very careful the way we talk about abortion, y'all. You know what I mean? Like let's be very careful the way we talk about moralism, right? Because these things are kind of a part of the badge, a part of the identity. And I mean, you don't have to look far to see the same mechanism at work here in the States. And I'm really grateful that we have always been about carrying the banner of um, of being anti-nationalistic. You
Mm.
know, the Adventist Church has always been anti-nationalistic, and watch this. Almost, it seemed like before we didn't really know why, right? Like we thought it was about fighting against the Catholic Church. Somebody mentioned that in the comments. We thought it was against fighting against the Catholic Church. Turns out the Catholics ain't the problem, right?
Mm.
Uh, um, but that, the larger issue is tribalism, right?
Mm.
Um, that that we want to somehow, some way, um, make our tribe the tribe, right?
Right.
Our tribe, we are here's the Adventist, the the peculiar people,
Right.
the church, right? Yeah, we want to make our tribe the tribe, and and so the temptation is that we will leverage spiritual imagery and spiritual concepts to serve our purpose. But the kingdom of God is not about serving our purpose. Like, Jesus did not come, and Jesus makes this very clear, right? And that's why I don't have no problem speaking to this. To my church members, I'll give you an example, Born. I had a member
Mm.
text me right after Charlie Kirk was murdered, and ooh, I could tell y'all some stories about post Charlie Kirk. But I had a member text me and ask me, can we? And the funny thing is, I got this text right before I stood up to preach, right? He says, can we put up a sign outside of the church that says, come in here to learn about the Sabbath? And I didn't respond. At first, yeah, I had a good reason. I was about to preach. I need some time to think about it. It just so happened the elders were having lunch together. And so, right after church that day. And so I put it to the elders, and one of the elders, very wise, said, I don't think we want to lead with that.
Mm.
He said, I think we want one of the elders, and they all pretty much agreed. I think we want to tweak the language so that we're not. But what was he trying to do? He was trying to leverage the death of Charlie Kirk as an opportunity to connect with people who were interested in the Sabbath because they were fans and followers of Charlie Kirk. Y'all caught that, right?
Right.
There's been a lot of that, actually.
Yeah. And these people are not seeking to follow God. They are promoting their nation, their tribe, their kingdom. And we are not about that kingdom. As a matter of fact, we are not about any kingdom other than the kingdom of God. And Jesus says in no uncertain terms to the disciples, um, it is not for you to know the times and the seasons. Like the coming of my kingdom is my own business. Just know it's not your kingdom. He says,
Mm.
now are we gonna take over the Romans? And Jesus like, yo, dude, this is not what we're doing. He says, I want you to go and wait for the Holy Spirit. Like we on a different mission. You guys are talking about um, a nationalism. I'm talking about kingdom building. You building your own kingdom, and I'm trying to build my father's kingdom. And that's the easy response to that. We need to be careful to identify when nationalism is hiding in Christian garb and in Christian spaces and call it out for what it is. And the issue is that nationalism in Christian spaces is usually white nationalism. Is
Mhm.
that's the issue. And um, does that mean that um, all white nationalists are white? Nope, that's for certain. But I remember talking to some. I remember talking to some Nigerian guys, and they said they had never heard of Al Green, and I was like, "What? Like, you never heard of Al Green? You never heard of Marvin Gaye?" Well, because in Nigeria, they are taught that soul music, and I'm not even talking about Al Green, Let's Stay Together. I'm talking about Al Green, Precious Lord. My mom used to play that album nonstop. Um, And y'all know Al Green is still a pastor. Like Al Green still he's a
Hmm.
believer. He's got a whole entire church. But they were taught that they're not supposed to listen to that music. They're supposed to
Hmm.
be singing hymns and the Gaithers. And it's just like, what's that about? Well, we know what it's about. We know what it's about, right? And so it's easy, Born. It's an important question. I promise you, we need to talk about this more because it's an issue not in all of Christendom right now. It's an issue. It's a huge issue in Adventism, and it needs to be addressed. We need to get
Yeah.
back to our kingdom mandates rather than nationalistic focus.
Let me do a
Thank you.
follow-up question on that just before I bring Ed Zirkowitz in. Uh, I'm thinking about the churches I pastored, and I had a few people, Christopher, who were very angry about they really were steamed about immigrants generally.
Mm,
But for the most part, most of the people that I had in my churches didn't who were speaking against immigration were not like that. They were not cruel people. They were not people who would dash immigrants' children against the stones, to quote Psalm 137. They were people, they would say, but still, it is technically illegal for them to come across here and work here. And we just want to keep the laws of the land. It's just
great.
technically illegal for them to do that. We don't hate them. We don't dislike brown people. We don't dislike Spanish people, speaking people. They're fine. If they would just come here legally, then I would
Yeah.
like them just fine. So this has been, you know, I
Listen,
remember listening to that at the time when I was the technically the pastor of a 200 member Spanish speaking church, most
mm,
of whom were illegals.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, man, listen, thank you for saying that. And I laugh, but y'all got to know I'm not trying to be dismissive or mean. It's just because I know that there are some very well-meaning people, some of which are my own members, are very well-meaning people who are just terribly misinformed about what the issue is here. Y'all realize that slavery was legal. Like and that's why we started where we started, right? The whole system is founded on injustice. So you're gonna come here, displace the natives, and then start making rules about who can come. It's like, come on, y'all. Like, does anybody feel uncomfortable about this? Like, does anybody feel like there's something inherently wrong about this? And that in and of itself is indicative of white privilege and white supremacy that we get decided to make the rules. Like, we don't want to ask the natives what they think. Like, hey, thank you all for not killing us and letting us stay. Let's talk about who else we think is safe. Like, no, they start making their own rules, and I think that's was at the core of it, is that how we understand law and order, and how we understand legality and how laws work. And that some laws are unjust, which is
Yeah.
why we saw the Catholic bishop telling his people, "Hey, disobey that law because that's evil." Right? Um, I think I'm so glad you brought it up though, because I think the task here is to help our people, and this is like it's really hard for us, Elder. Like, we're supposed to be teaching people about the kingdom, not teaching people how to read. Like, I need you to read between the lines. Like, everything that's legal is not right. You know what I mean? Everything that's legal is not just. Just because it's legal, that means they voted it. That doesn't mean that it's for the good of the people. And I think part of the task for us is to be a part of educating our people to about the history behind some of this stuff, and the motivation behind some of this stuff, and kind of the bigger picture. Because I think they are a lot of times they are just like, well, why do they come here legal? They're being sincere, but it's like, maybe the easy short answer is I think they're coming illegally for the same reason why the folks at Jamestown came illegally. You know what I mean?
Same
Because
reason my grandparents came.
like same reason anybody comes illegally. And we didn't talk about the myths, but I think I might have put it in the notes that this
It's in
idea.
your article, which I'll publish on Tuesday.
Yeah, so we talk about myths in the article. It might be in the show notes about how a lot of this is based on misinformation, and about a misunderstanding and about propaganda, even about what immigrants do when they come. This kind of they are violent criminals. It's like, man, I know a whole bunch of immigrants. These people going to work and they going home. They paying
That's
tax.
right.
They're staying out of the way because, and I know somebody right now who's just trying to navigate. He's trying not to get pulled over. He's trying not to, he's just trying to provide for his family, and his wife fled their country because she was at risk and is dealing with the subsequent fallout of the trauma. She's terribly, um, she's been terribly wounded because of the
Right.
experiences that she's had. And I think a lot of work needs to be done to help our people understand like the bigger picture and the stuff that's at work. So
Yeah. I'm going to bring Ed Zerkwitz in now. Ed, go ahead and ask your question.
Thank you, Dr. Christopher. So I live in Canada, and but we're still very aware of some of the things going on there. For example, over this last year, the number of people vacationing, visiting, going to United States from Canada has dropped about 40%. And there's stories of Canadians. There was a woman who went to visit her son in California, I think it was, and she was arrested and detained for 28 days and stuff like that. So, so that's part of why Canadians don't want to go there. There's a lot of stories of ICE and whatever, doing this kind of stuff. So the question I have for you is, first of all, I'll tell you a little story. A number of years ago in Vancouver, British Columbia, there's a church that there was an illegal immigrant slash criminal that had sanctuary, which within a large church, and they looked after him, fed him, whatever. For doctors would come in, I think, once in a while. They did this for about 2 years, and then it somehow got resolved with the authorities. So, do you have a position on churches providing sanctuary?
Good question.
yeah, so the fact is I'm fluid on a lot of this stuff, right? I'm not drawing hard lines in the sand, but I do believe our church hosts a church who is made up of mostly Latinos, all Latinos, maybe one or two Americans. And I assume that some of them may be illegal. Um, but what I know of them is that they are deeply committed Christians. I mean, I've sat in on a couple of their worship services and even on a wedding that I was very impressed. Like it was 15 minutes wedding and 2 hours revival. No lie. I was I was overwhelmed. I was like, I thought I was coming to a wedding. They had a whole entire church and deliverance service. And this is my philosopher, um, priest heart, that why would anybody want to bother these people? Wow. These are some of the most peace loving. Oh, let me tell you, the pastor invites me to her house for lunch. She sells dinners. That's how she gets by. She sells dinners. She's not paid to pastor, but she's a very committed pastor, deeply spiritual. They come to the church like 30 minutes, 45 minutes before just to pray. Deeply spiritual. I come out of the house, she's like, she sells dinner. So I come ready to pay. She's like, no, pastor. She won't let me pay her for the food. So hospitable and gracious. It's just like these folks are model Christians. We love them. Like, who's bothering these people? Show me who they are. Like, because I want to fight them. Like, they're such great people. Like, why? So I think that we have a moral responsibility to protect innocent people. You know what I mean? If I don't, I my heart aches the story you told. Like, we're not harboring criminals. We're not doing that. Somebody's a violent criminal. We know you robbed a bank. Nah, bro, you can't stay here. But people who are seeking asylum, seeking opportunity, seeking peace, and are contributing significantly to our community, our society. What are we doing? Like, and all in the name of because it's not legal. Well, we see what the legal process is doing. They letting Afrikaners in who have all the opportunities in the world. Like, that's not fair. So no, we protecting these folks. No, we're not telling you where they live. No, we're not giving you. No, we're not this. And I'm learning this. Like, this is employees only. Like, this is a closed area to the public. Y'all hide back there. Like, so, I don't have any hard and fast position, so to speak, except that I strongly believe that, in my heart of hearts, like, we know the difference between criminals and people who are seeking peace and really just trying to get by. And if we are clear that a person is not violent, is not a criminal, you know, is contributing to society. The immigrants pay taxes. They contribute. Then I think we have a responsibility to care for them.
That's a good question, Ed. Uh,
Mm.
by the way, some of you who read Adventist Today regularly will have seen last month, toward the end of last month, I think, I posted a video of a Seventh-day Adventist woman she was taking her daughter to Shenandoah Valley Academy, and she was lunged, the guy lunged at her and threw her on the ground, and the daughter was screaming, saying, "What are you doing to my mother?" And it was interesting, Christopher, how that the fact that she was part of our tribe sort
Mhm.
of confused people a little bit. Like, okay, she was illegal, but wow, did they have to do that to her? And I've always said, on all these people that we other, gay
Yeah,
people, people of different countries, different languages, different races, once they become your friends and you know them,
it's
it
different.
begins to break down those barriers. And people are saying, wait a minute, she was from Honduras, but her daughter was going to our academy and we knew the daughter and she was so nice and we loved this woman. It makes a big difference.
And
Not,
and listen, we know that the process is convoluted and intentionally creates obstacles for people. We know that. We also know that certain people get preferential treatment. We know that. We just saw it, right? So we are not harboring terrorists. We are not harboring criminals. But Pastor Flores, that's my people. You know what I mean? We protected Pastor Flores. I don't care what anybody says. We protected her.
I get
And
it.
I think that's the thing, and it goes back to what we were talking about education. Like, we have to teach people how to wrestle, right? That we got to be able to call something out and say, whoa, 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 that lady is straight. Like, yeah, she might still been going. Listen, I have members who are actively working on the process. Like, they're hiring lawyers. They're trying to work through it. Nobody wants to be illegal. You know what I mean? People want to be here because they want the opportunity. They don't want to lose the opportunity. But you want them to what? Wait 20 years until the legal process says, "Oh, okay, come on in." When they're giving Afrikaners preferential treatment. Nah, come on. That's not fair. That's not fair. And I'm not letting them in but I ain't kicking them out either. Yeah. Um,
Linda
and
Nottingham is our next question. Linda, nice to see you.
Good to see you too, Lauren. And Pastor Thompson, Dr. Thompson, thank you so much for your presentation. I appreciated the content, and I especially appreciated the kind and unassuming, soft-spoken way that you presented it. Thank you for that. I have two brief things to say, and then I have a question. And Lauren, part of what I have to say sort of goes to what you mentioned about people say, well, if people would just come here legally, that would solve it all. It's really not quite that simple. In fact, some of us may recall here in the United States, it's been a number of years ago, but there was a bipartisan group that came up with, I think they were called the Gang of Eight or something, that came up with a solution and a fairly decent policy, set of policies for managing the immigration issue. And they couldn't get enough support for it. I don't think it's a problem that really people are desirous of solving in the way that we might think would be good process to do that. I have people living next door to me, a lovely family, young people. I have two small children. The father is an engineer. The mother works. They both pay taxes. They own their cars. They own the home next door to me. And they have become, they came here legally under an asylum program from Venezuela, but all of that's been taken away. And so technically they are now here illegally, and wow. and who knows what will happen? Will their children be separated? I mean, it's just unbelievable. And I do want to say that I have never been more proud of my daughter, who now lives in Chicago, my adult daughter, who told me the other day that she went out with a church group, not an Adventist group, but a Protestant group, non-denominational group, that go out regularly to protest out at the ICE facility in Broadview, which is out in the suburbs outside of Chicago, west of Chicago. And she wondered, why are we doing this? Because nobody inside, the people that are being detained there, can't see the protesters. It was peaceful. But what she learned from the folks that she went with that go all the time is that when they go, they call attention to the problem. The press is there because the protesters are there. And so it's a way for them to draw attention to what is being done. But my question for you is this. There's a program out these days. I work with business owners in their businesses as a consultant, and it's called EOS, which is an entrepreneurial operating process, which is designed to streamline business process and become more successful. And part of it has to do with the notion of having the right people in the right seats on the bus. So if your business is a bus, you want to have your employees in the seats. You're smiling, you've probably heard of it. You want to have your employees in the seats that best suit their skill sets and where they fit the best. And it's a good workable kind of system. But for you, I would just like to turn it around. As a Seventh-day Adventist, I have begun to wonder if I'm on the right bus. And my question is, what in a wild imagination, what can you conceive of that would change the focus of our denomination? Because I agree with you totally. You said the very last little thing you said, I don't think end times are going to be about the Sabbath and going to be about this and that. And I couldn't agree with you more. But you said, could it be that it's going to be about civil rights? And I've always sort of thought of it in that light, that it was going to be love was going to be the issue. But that and civil rights are probably, we would look at that as the same thing. But Pastor, that's not where we are. Fully, I don't know if I would name a percentage, but a very large percentage of our denomination in this country, small as we are in the grand scheme of Adventism, is very much in favor of the MAGA philosophy, the 2025 project, and all of those things, Christian nationalism. And so with that said, what has to happen for us? Does the North American division just fade into oblivion? Or will we look to a leader that will rise up and change the mentality or the direction? Or will those of us that feel differently just drop out? What could possibly happen to put us on a good course toward what you suggest, and I believe is where we need to be thinking about the time of the end?
Great
Um,
question.
it's an excellent question. It's kind of the question, I think. And I'll be fair and honest and say I don't know. I do believe though that um I was listening to, I can't think of her name, but sociology professor um who's been talking a lot about um erosion of our rights. And she said something that struck me, and that she said, I have a belief, I believe in the human spirit. And that might sound kind of humanistic, but the Bible says where sin abounds, there does grace abound so much more, right?
Amen.
And I believe, I really do believe this. Here's the thing. One of the reasons why I really appreciate your question is that after the election and some things I experienced, with church leadership subsequently made me really discouraged. I was really discouraged, and just a number of things kind of happening at once. And I talked to some people I really truly respect about it, and tried to get some clarity. I called some folks at the GC, called some folks at the NAD, and said, "Man, what do you see?" Kind of like what you're saying. But here's what I know. I know that there's nothing new under the sun, and the challenges we're facing are actually not new. They're old. And I do truly believe that what the scriptures say are going to happen will happen. So first of all, here's a little jokey joke that 144,000 might be a real number. Might be a real number.
Oh
But
my! Here, I thought
but
you were an optimist.
no, but I'm fiercely optimistic, and I really truly do believe that. Well, think about it. The proof is in the pudding. You said your daughter is seeing the light. Like she's on the front lines. And watch this. It might just be that the remnant wasn't about denominationalism at all,
After all,
right? And so
exactly.
I do believe, though, I strongly, strongly, strongly believe that people are beginning to wake up. That people are beginning to wake up. I don't care where they go to church, or what they eat for dinner, but I do think that what's happening in our world is catching people's attention, and that ultimately, which is where I was ultimately going, ultimately, um, the move of the Spirit, and you call it whatever you want, latter rain, and the God's providence moves people in a direction where they're saying, you know what, I don't know what they're talking about the 2,300 days and nothing like that, but that right there is wrong. You know what I mean? So I'm with these people over here, like,
Mhm.
so I think in a big, when we look at this in a grand scheme of things, I think God is working with the protesters in Chicago. Like,
Mhm.
I think that's God, and I think that God is bringing the children of God together in this moment
Yes.
to
Yes.
stand for what's right.
Mhm.
And it ain't gonna have nothing to do with what's happening in Silver Spring.
No, and it's not focused on apocalyptic kind of stuff or about numbers. It's about people.
But so watch this. But it comes to bear when we talk about the Sabbath, because we're talking about people's right to worship according to the dictates of their conscience,
That's
right?
right.
It comes to bear when we talk about abortion, because that's her body. She can do with it what she wants.
Mhm.
You know what I mean? Like, that's literally what God gave us as free moral agents, that we have autonomy to think and to choose and to act for ourselves. And I believe that those principles, or I should say, people are coming together to stand on those principles of justice and of human decency. And I think that's where you'll find God's people.
Uh,
Thank you.
Christopher, are you aware at all of now I know there was a story from the Lake Union this past week that talked about that address a statement, press release.
Yeah.
Are you aware of more of these? Has the denomination pitched in at all to say, stop this?
So listen. First of all, thank you for asking that. So first of all, and you were the first person who sent it to me, right? Like I hadn't seen it until you sent it to me. The sad reality is I know there's going to be a backlash. Like I know there's going to be a response, right? And we're going to fuss and fight about this. But let's be clear that the General Conference and the North American Division has actually already spoken to this, right? Like we have official statements about this stuff. Why we have entities within the church, and I want to be crystal clear that I publicly said that Northern New England Conference was completely out of line for for issuing a statement in support of Charlie Kirk. What in the world? We do not support terrorists. Like we are not writing statements in support of white supremacists and white nationalists. We don't do that here. The church's own statements clarify that. So if you say something on your Facebook page, your personal Facebook page, okay, then your president has, your boss has the right and a responsibility to deal with you personally. But when an actual denominational entity publishes a statement that goes against the previously established public statements of the church, then we have a larger problem. And obviously there's space for debate, right? There's space for conversation and debate, but based upon what, right? Based upon what? Biblical principles. No, we don't support white supremacists here. So the point is, I already know that there's going to be a backlash. There's going to be some debate about it. But there has been an ongoing debate, kind of silently, at the division that I know of now. And I'm not trying to put anybody on blast, but I know that there's conversation about, what's the collective response, and I think that the polarization of the moment makes it very difficult, to respond for several reasons. I mean, I'm I'm not making any I'm not making any I'm just speaking to what's happening. But I think we're going to keep fighting about this, and I think that it's indicative of the moment that we're in. If you thought you were safe because you were an Adventist, think again. You
I,
know,
I have seen this in the past, Christopher, where somebody holding a doctrine that we like, such as the Sabbath, sort of cleanses them of all their other
yeah.
uh, sins. And that's kind of what's happened. Oh, look, Charlie Kirk. Oh, yeah, he was a bigot, but he was our bigot because he kept the Sabbath. Brother Emmanuel, you're up.
Thank you. Beautiful presentation. A couple of months ago, we had the general conference, and a strong emphasis have been put on the mission of the church.
Mm.
So, keeping in mind the mission of the church, what does that mean? How do you see the Seventh-day Adventist Church coming to have a word in the conversation? And if it's possible, when do you see them coming to the conversation, coming to the table?
You're saying in a sense, in a sense of global mission and response to the crisis that we're seeing.
From the general conference to the division, to the union, to the local congregation, how do you see this possible coming at the table and engage in the conversation, keeping in mind the mission of the church?
Yeah, I'm glad you asked that because I think it goes back to Miss Linda's question. What's the bigger picture here? Like, I really do believe that um, people are sensitive to the moment. right? And I do think that whereas we have bad actors and we have a lot of misguided people, we also have people who are sensitive to the bigger picture. And when I say to the bigger picture, back to Miss Linda, love. That's the bigger picture, y'all. I've been preaching a series in one of my churches since October about the product, the process, and the providence of love, right? You know, what love does, what it's for, what it's about. And what I'm finding is that in Thessalonians, Paul's response to crisis is love. Like Paul says, the greatest of these, faith, hope, and love, and the greatest of these is love. Like John in First John, in the epistles of John, John's saying, look, y'all, the end is near. Like love, right? So I believe that love is the response. And I think that people are saying in this moment, man, we got to be about God's business. You know, we got to be about what God is about. And God is about demonstrating love to the world because God so loved that he gave his own life. Like the whole kingdom is founded on love and self-sacrificial love. And so I do think that's happening. And I don't think it necessarily comes from the top down. I think to see the mission happening, you got to go to the front lines where people are saying, Pastor, we got to be out here serving. Pastor, we got to, these people, they lost their SNAP benefits. We got to give food to these people. Like it was a layperson who came to me and said, Pastor, the food bank needs more sites. We need to be a site. That was a layperson who hounded me for months until we decided to be a site for the food bank to come and distribute food. And I think that's happening more often than we recognize, that on the front lines, people are taking responsibility for what they believe is right and what they believe is true and acting on it. And I think those are the real leaders of the moment. And I'm not waiting on some important figurehead to tell us what to do. But that being said, um, I have not written our leaders off. I've been vocal about calling folks to the carpet. Um, and I think I probably have some enemies because of that. And it's not meant to be um it's not meant to be malicious or anything like that. It's that we know what we're about, and we have Emmanuel, thank you so much. We about God's business. Jesus said, when you did it to the least of these, you did it to me. And I will never forget about Mother Teresa. She said they asked her, why do you do what you do? She says, when I see the most, impoverished and depraved and sick people in Calcutta, she said, I see the face of Jesus. This is a no-brainer. Like, so I'm committed to that. I'm committed to being the hands and feet of God, but I know I'm not the only one. I know that there are lots of people who have that same commitment and who have that same mindset, and I'm with them. You know what I mean? I'm not waiting on Silver Spring or Columbia, Maryland to tell me. No, I'm with the people who are on the grounds trying to get stuff done because the scripture says, blessed are the ones who the Lord finds working when he comes. And I want to be found. I want to be found working and serving for the sake of love, right? Because it says, if I speak with the tongues of angels, I can give my body to be burned. I can give all I own. But if it's not for love, it profits nothing. And so I really want to be God's representative and to do so by showing love to the world. I think that's a tremendous privilege of ours, and that's literally the job. That's the job. That's the whole job.
Your space there at in Beaufort is perfect for that with a big parking lot and the way you're
Yeah.
laid out. That's a wonderful space for
I
food
can tell you,
pantry.
I can tell you some wild stories. The church is currently fighting about should we dedicate the Sabbath hours to service, and it's not the first time I've seen it, but I've been very vocal with saying to our people that listen, y'all, love comes first, not Sabbath school. Love comes first. Hey, we need to do ATSS, Sabbath school in the afternoon, so we can serve people in the morning.
Hey, George Tichy, you're up now.
Yes, thank you for this significant and very important presentation. 36 years ago today, I landed on this country, and I was actually at this time of the day. I was about 5 hours on American soil. I came legally, and I came to stay, and so that's a great day for me. But at the same time, today, 36 years later, I have to say that's a very sad day because the America that I came to no longer exists. And I never signed up for this America that is now a fascist state, a regime that my parents fled from, and communists from Europe in the 40s, 1940s. So it's a day of mixed feelings. And I wanted to share this, double emotion that I'm experiencing these days. And also, since now lawlessness is the law of the land, I need to drop a little word here about prudence. In 1948, my parents, with 3 children, I was not born at that time yet, they fled from the communist Czechoslovakia. They left without telling anybody about their plans. Their parents, my grandparents, didn't know they are leaving. Nobody knew, because they already knew one thing. My parents knew one thing. You tell one person and your plans may not be fulfilled. They left in total, without revealing anything to anybody. When they made it to France, they put a phone call telling the family, we left. Why did they do that? Exactly because of this. So the prudence word here for everyone on this forum, because we live in a very difficult times. So be very prudent as we be prudent as we talked about these issues. Not here too, but when we go to our homes and all that, because we never know who is around. And I on the class, Faith and Reason class at Sligo, about 2 or 3 weeks ago, someone presented and talked about a survey that showed that over 50%, I guess it was 58 or 68, I'm not sure now, over 50% of Adventists are MAGA. And be very careful, because those people, if they are MAGA, if they are anti-democracy, if they are supporting the destruction of their own country, if they are shooting their own feet, they will have no problem in denouncing, going to the authorities and say, oh, this person here, this person that. And the regime now is what we are seeing. So be prudent and wise, everybody. You never know who is sitting on the pew with you. I just wanted to share this. Thank you again for the presentation. It's very important, very pertinent, and keep preaching, brother.
Brother George, thank you so much. I want to challenge you a little bit though. I appreciate you sharing that. That's a really powerful story. And happy anniversary.
Thank you. Challenge me. Let's see.
I want to challenge you though. As you were experiencing freedom, that was, you said 36 years ago, that was in the midst of the crack epidemic. That was in the midst of the war on drugs. And that's just one example, or somebody's experiencing freedom. Another community is experiencing the worst kind of oppression, right? but America has always been that. America has always had this kind of dual consciousness, like this double face that in one sense we're the land of opportunity, but in other sense we're the land of oppression. And I think that's kind of the job. As you were talking, I was thinking about Cornel West's Democracy Matters, that he talks about how the democratic experience of America has always been a tad bit hypocritical and a tad bit delicate, right? That it's never finished. It was unjust from the beginning. We we got a group of people coming for freedom, and they oppressed one group and imprisoned another group. It's like the whole thing is jacked up. But that's literally the job. The job is to make it what it should be. And I guess the task is for us. We live as Christians with a similar dual consciousness and a dual challenge, in that we promote liberty and freedom and justice, just like what you talked about, but we're also mindful that this world is not our home, and that gives us a kind of hope that that we know that the nation could never deliver, right? But I think your story is why we fight, right? Because here's here he didn't come to rob a bank. He didn't come to rape women. His family did not come for anything other than for opportunity. And as we raise those stories, we give space for others. But I think you just point out that the very core of why this conversation is important.
I thought it was interesting what George said, because the typical Adventist mythology is that they're going to put you in the electric chair and pull the lever because you're keeping the Sabbath, or they're going to turn you into the authorities because you're keeping the Sabbath. What if it's really not that at all? Dr.
And I want us to be clear that these things are more closely related than we thought. We thought it was going to be all about the Sabbath, but some Adventists is going to be turned in because they're harboring, illegals. You know what I mean? So the big picture is really, and this is what we need to spend time talking about, is the reach and the control of the empire. What do they have the right to control? And they can let Afrikaners in, but not let my brother George come and get a good education and a good job.
Next class, you need to talk to us about the theology of empire. It's a big thing right now. Dr. Bob Johnston.
Yes, I appreciate the presentation. We're talking about something where religion and politics intersect, and we can't seem to separate them. I agree that our immigration policies and laws are broken and don't seem to have the political will to correct them. I agree that what ICE is doing is deplorable. I deplore all of that. But unless we understand why people support that kind of thing, I don't think we're going to get very far. Remember that the current administration was voted back into power with this as one of its primary platforms, promising to do what they're doing.
Yeah.
Why did so many people support it? We're talking about something that's not unique to the United States. It was behind Brexit in the UK. It's behind the success of the Fidesz party in Hungary and of similar nationalistic parties in other places in the world. To wave it aside as white nationalism is really too simplistic. It's not obviously white when South African blacks riot against immigrants from Zimbabwe and such things as that. I think the problem is people are afraid of losing their national identity. We're not talking about physical race, we're talking about ethnicity. They're afraid of having their identity lost or diluted, and of course the culture also. And they're particularly afraid of immigrants who they think will be hard to assimilate or do not have the desire to assimilate.
But
When
Bob,
people
Bob,
see, yeah, just when people see lots of people walking around wearing hijabs, it makes them nervous. So how do we
isn't that the very
alleviate that fear?
isn't that the very definition of xenophobia?
I'm sorry?
Yeah.
Isn't that the very definition of xenophobia?
I suppose it is. Is
Yeah.
xenophobia irrational? The xenophobia of the Native Americans was entirely rational. We just don't want the same thing to be done to us who are European origin.
But come
So
on, let's be clear.
xenophobia is not necessarily an irrational reaction.
No, listen, we got to be fair about this. First of all, what made what made um what made Nazi Germany possible was propaganda and injustice in terms of we're gonna rework the whole policies, the whole government structure. Like, so we're not just simply talking about unjust laws and authoritarianism, the complete subversion of our political process. We're also talking about a lot of misinformation, a lot of propaganda, and a lot of flat out cold hard hate, right? So you ask why people supported it? Well, people support it because hate is in vogue right now. They literally went on national television. The president did and made a speech. Well, he wasn't the president at the time, but made a speech that they're eating dogs and cats. Come on, man! Like, where does that stuff come from? It's propaganda that comes from hate and bigotry, and I think there needs to be more conversation around that, right? Like you said it.
Why did a statement like that elicit a positive response among such a large proportion of the population, enough to get him elected? I know it's silly. The whole thing was a big lie, but people don't believe something like that unless there's something in them that responds to it. So there was a prior problem before the propaganda.
Yeah, so let's be clear though that this whole concept of nationalism and the desire to protect our our nationalist customs, that literally comes from white supremacy. So for instance, when you say that people are afraid of people wearing hijabs and people are concerned about assimilation, for one, let's be clear that that's literally the job for immigrants. Like their whole life is assimilating because they don't want to they don't want themselves to become the problem. They don't want to be targeted. They don't want to not fit in. They don't want, like, so their whole life is all about assimilation. Are we saying that assimilation means they can't dress how they want to dress? like, come on, what does that mean? Their whole life is they got to learn how to drive on the right side of the road. They got to learn how to return taxes. They got to learn like the laws and the customs of the land. But they can't wear a hijab. That's what we're talking about when we say bigotry and hate. People can dress how they want.
I'm just trying to tell you that unless you understand what the opponents believe and why they believe it, you're not going to persuade them to another way of thinking.
No, I understand it. That doesn't
I
make it
don't
any less
think you do
racist. Is the
I
issue?
don't think you really understand it, frankly.
No, I understand it. What I'm saying is that doesn't make it any less racist, right?
No, no, it doesn't. But the fact that it isn't limited to race in the usual definition of the word, it is related to ethnicity. Let me tell you one national experience to bring religion into it. Do you know one reason why Protestant Christianity has been so successful in Korea? It's
Go for it.
because it reinforced their resistance to Imperial Japanese domination. For about 40 years, Korea was part of Japan, and they wanted to erase Korean identity and Korean language. It was Christianity that gave them the moral strength to resist. Without Christianity, I think they would not have. So that's kind of a
No, so let's talk
and
about that a little.
the Japanese and the Koreans are basically the same race.
Yeah, so let's talk about that a little bit because we were just talking about that. Bourne was asking, like, how do we respond to those who want to use Christianity in the church as leverage for exclusionary practice and exclusionary policy? Listen, the church is not a safe harbor for people who hate other people. Let's be clear about that. Like, the church is not giving you the tools to exclude people and to utilize hate as motivation for anything. Like, we're not co-signing that. Okay, so the task is ours to make sure that people understand what's Christian and what's good old-fashioned nationalism. Like, we
They might.
gotta make that distinction. Yeah,
You
and
can't do it.
I don't think it's hard for us to do that.
Well,
I don't think it's hard for us to do that.
I won't hog any more time, but I don't think you completely understand the problem, frankly.
Yeah.
Well, that's something that we need to keep talking about then, because I actually get what Dr. Johnston is saying. He's saying that if we're going to fight against your enemy, you've got to look through the eyes of your enemy and see what they're thinking. And bigotry is an enemy. I have a really hard time looking through those eyes, but a lot of people do and do it happily. It is
And
a big problem.
I want to be crystal clear that I'm mindful that not everybody who is touting nationalistic values is speaking from a racist position. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is that we understand that the stuff is founded in racism. Okay? The whole concept of manifest destiny and all of these colonization edicts were all based in this idea that European groups and white racial groups were, how shall we say, superior than minority, darker skinned people. That's literally the basis of the papal bulls. So what I'm saying is, at the core, we know that it's racist. Now, are we saying that everybody who is promoting it and touting it and spouting it is racist? No, not necessarily. But at the same time, we can call it what it is.
Yeah, you're talking about the doctrine of discovery, I think.
That's right.
Yeah. It's 3:36. Can you take the last question?
Yep.
Okay, and you've got the last word, after which Bjorn gets to dismiss us.
Okay, thank you. Some of you may know that I'm chairman of the board of Adventist Today. And on behalf of Adventist Today, I want to say that there are precious few places in the Seventh-day Adventist Church where the dialogue that just occurred between Dr. Johnston and Dr. Thompson can occur. This is one of the treasures of Adventist Today and Adventist Today Sabbath Seminar, as we can talk openly, we can talk frankly, and pursue understanding that is hard to find elsewhere, particularly within the bureaucracy. So I just wanted to throw that out. Dr. Thompson, I wanted to throw in, I have a statement to make a little later, but I want to tell you a human interest story since you brought up Elder Bradford. There was at one time I was an executive in Advent Health, and in about 1980, the GC gave us a present. In 1927, a hospital was founded in Nashville, Tennessee, and it was built exclusively for Black Adventists. Discrimination in hospitals was pretty severe during that era. And so a hospital was built in Nashville, and people came from all over the eastern part of the United States to go to that hospital because of the nature of it. So in 1980, not knowing what to do with it because it was in financial trouble, the General Conference gave us this hospital. And we operated it about for 3 years and tried whatever we could to make it successful. But it was failing financially. Black people had many places to go in the Nashville area for superior medical care, and it just was an anachronism from a healthcare perspective. So Elder Bradford came down, several other church leaders showed up, and we talked with him and told him what we thought we had to do. And Elder Bradford cried. I will never forget this image. It's seared in my mind of him holding out the palms of his hands like he was holding something and saying with tears in his voice, "Can't we just save this one little ewe lamb?" It was a powerful moment where a symbol of something so important to a part of our constituency was just not going to make it. And we had to face reality, but it was a deeply emotional experience for Elder Bradford. He of course went along with the decision, but it hurt him. I could tell. Just this morning, the Faith and Reason Sabbath School class from Sligo Church had a presentation by Dr. Ginger Ketter-Welling. She's the president of an Adventist university in the Philippines. And in the discussion, she said they were trying to get academics to come to the Philippines to expose their students to kind of a different culture and different way of thinking, but nobody in America is interested in going there to teach. And somebody asked a question about that, to which she responded that the United States is not on our radar screen over here. Well, I had to respond and tell her she just really insulted us, which was meant as a joke. But maybe the world's not on our radar. We're not on the radar screen of many other people in this world, and maybe our tempest in a teapot is more here at home. And perhaps we should recognize that in a church with allegedly 23 million people, and we're about 4 to 5% of that, we're not the tail that wags the dog anymore, if we ever were. So instead of, we need to solve our own problems here. I think what Dr. Thompson is telling us is a reality for many people. The rest of us who may not sense that reality personally have to try to understand it and have to try to find how we together work our way through that. And that's all I have to say.
Thank you very much. I just noticed Jean raised his hand. Do you want to stay on, or are you ready to take off? I don't want to keep you any longer than we promised you, Christopher.
I do have a AY program that's calling me, but I want to hear the question.
Okay, John, go ahead. Let me unmute you here. There you go.
Yes, hello, can you hear me?
Can hear you
Yep.
just fine, thanks.
Okay, good, great. Thank you, Dr. Thompson. Thank you. This is a great topic that's very dear to me because I am an immigrant. I'm from another country, although I'm in Canada, but I've lived in the US for some 20 years before I moved to Canada. Uh, what I want to say is something that possibly, I don't know if people in the group or the people have thought of it but never mention it. It seems like, not it seems, but the majority of people that are from Latin America, from the Caribbeans, or I should say the majority of immigrants in the US are Christians. Either they are from Christian nations or they've converted, but most of the immigrants are Christians. So it seems like their Christianity has been forgotten. Their Christianity has been completely disappeared. The US is a Christian nation. And the US, as a Christian nation, is traumatizing Christian people, mostly Christian people, brothers and sisters, as if Christ has been ripped out of the immigrants. They don't see Christ in them. They don't see the face of Christ in each individual immigrant, whereas they don't see them as part of them as Christians, brothers and sisters. They see them as strangers, as if others, or maybe Muslim. But if a Muslim country, such as maybe Pakistan, or what other Muslim country, or Saudi Arabia, another Muslim country, was traumatizing our brothers and sisters, Christians, as the US is doing now, what would be the reaction of the US government, of the American people? So I think the Christianity of those folks has to be brought forward in order for a change to appear to be made in what's going on. They have to see them as Christian brothers and sisters, as part of them. Thank you. That's what I want to say.
First of all, that's an excellent point, a very salient point that we have not talked about. But that when we other a group of people, we other the whole of them. Like they, that their entire existence is other. Like they fervent believers in Jesus, just like we are, even more so. And I think that's one of the signals that lets us know how nationalism works, right? Even when we say Christian nationalism, it ain't Christian at all. It's something else. The question is, what is it, right? And where does it come from? But that's how we know that nationalism is evil, because we can't even recognize our own brothers and sisters, right? Um, but when I worship with them, and we finished saying that, when we worship with them, when we break bread with them, when we go to their weddings and go to the quinceañera and all this, we realize, wait a minute, they not that far. They're not that much different from us. We got Sweet 16, they got quinceañera. It's the same thing. We are one. We are one, but it it bears in mind for us to think about, what does this kind of othering come from? That we can't recognize the basic humanity and the sincere and deep Christianity of people who are just out here trying to put on a new roof and clean some apartment buildings. Like, wow, what is that about? That's not about nationalism. That's not about nationalism. Because if we were true nationalists, we would be supporting these people. They with us. They doing the same thing we doing. And that's a signal to us. I think that's an excellent point, and we have not talked about that. But I will tell you this: when I go to these church services and when I go to these cultural experiences, I'm always overwhelmed with like awe and with respect, because the level of sacredness that they brought to that wedding I went to, I was just like, sheesh, this is the most spiritual wedding I've ever been to, you know? And how does that get set aside? That tells us a lot about how nationalism works and what the real motivation of it is. So thank you so much for sharing that. That's profound.
Did they have an altar call?
They did, man. You should have been there. It was like
Yeah.
serious,
No,
like
I've seen that.
they
I've seen that.
did. I was impressed. I've never seen anything like that before, and so like I couldn't help but think, like, sitting there. And watch this. A lady came to me after the wedding and said, "Are you the pastor of this church?" She's attending the wedding. She says, "Are you the pastor of this church?" She says, "Y'all worship on Saturday, don't you?" And I said, "Yes." And she said, "I'll be back." Right? It's like these people love the Lord. But it was a whole anointing service at the wedding, and I was just blown away. Like, man, these people were really serious about their faith. I had never seen anything like that.